All right, welcome back, and we're talking about the education tax. And let's go to the phone calls now. If you have a question for the superintendent, he's here to answer questions. So we'll take a few phone calls if we can. HTV, welcome to the program. You're on. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Martin, could I'd like to speak to Mr. Martin. I had a question. I started school.
Can you hear him, by the way? We can't hear him, Jay. If you could bring him up on the speakers real quick. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you good now. Thank you.
Okay. When I started school in 1939, in other words, I was, in those days, I graduated in the 50s when you could wish for good schools like that. But our teachers were the best, second to none in the nation. And you can imagine what they had to exist on. But at any rate, what I want to bring up was years ago, and today too, they had what we call 16 section lands. I know you're familiar with that. You got the taxes and any rigs put on their production. Well, now you probably know this too. That production's gone. I don't believe the school board gets very much money from that. And things were done wrong then, and I can remember. And I'll tell you quite frankly, they started paving streets in the parish. I got 2 streets. My street was paved. And it's a nice thing, too, but we could have been assessed for that. But at any rate, I believe it's like a mindset that somebody else should pay. And the business community is going to have to deal with this tax you're trying to give. And if we're that far behind, and you can go around, you can just look at, look at the schools. These things are needed. And we got to be able, people have to be educated so they can deal with the things, the politics that affect all of us, and with a little more intelligence than some of the people you can talk to. And that's the only way you can do it, is educate people. Because when I was in the service, I met people from all over. We were a special group. We had security clearances, and you met some very intelligent people. And it just seems, I mean, Terrebonne Parish, you can. People come on with some of the law enforcement people. None of them speak correct English. That's my greatest, thinking I can do, what's wrong. In other words, we need the 40 mills. The facts are there, and we might as well get the money. And that's the only.
So you're saying you would support, I mean, based on the fact that you want our education, based on our education level, to go up and be competitive, that you would support such a millage?
Yes, I would. I mean, it's not going to go. It's not going to go up overnight, but you got to start somewhere. And what you're speaking tonight, my mind is I'm looking at it 10 years from now.
Right.
My little grandchild, great-grandchild, goes to buy black, and that's a mess. And I mean, it's staring us right in the face, and I'm not a businessman, and so, in other words, it's easy for me to talk because I'm not paying. I have a homestead exemption. Right. For God's sakes, some kind of clear thinking people. The superintendent say he's telling you what the facts are. He done conjured him up. Those are the facts.
Yeah.
And we've got to live with them. And it's strictly the people that can do it. And the people are the parents of the children. So look at you. I got grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and I appreciate education. I mean, right. And I'm going to tell you again, you got to be able to hold your own. You're not going to live in Terrebonne Parish all your life.
Well, we appreciate the call, and I know the superintendent is glad to hear that you would support it. So thank you for calling.
Yeah, we're talking about those 16 section lands.
All right, we'll let him answer that right now, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And go ahead. Before we get any more callers, let me let you.
Thanks to the caller for mentioning that. That is a very important factor. 16 section lands. The school board owns the 16 section lands. Right. Historically, they've generated millions of dollars in oil royalty. We were very fortunate. Terrebonne Parish Schools benefited from that for years and years and years. To put that in perspective, 4 years ago, the school system collected $3.4 million in royalties. Last year, it was $281. There are no more royalties.
Right.
They're not even interested in leasing the property any longer. Hopefully, maybe some new technology one day would result in some renewed interest, but currently, That is no longer a revenue stream for us anymore. That has been evaporated as all the oil has been sucked out the ground. It's gone, and they moved to offshore and deep
A lot of
water.
people wouldn't know that. A lot of people thought you still had the land and you
We
get
still
it.
have the land.
But you have the land, but thought you would still be getting the royalties, but
It's not generating any revenue anymore. That's correct.
Okay, I'm
correct.
glad he brought that up.
The caller had made an excellent point. I'm glad he mentioned that.
Let's take another call. HTV, welcome to the program. Your question for the superintendent, please.
Yeah, I believe in the millage that y'all trying to read.
Right.
But my problem is that they got a lot of hypocrisy going on in Baton Rouge. When he came up with the concept of the lottery eligible for the tax for the school and the road, what happened to all that money?
Okay, so let me just make sure you correct it. You're a little leery because we're talking on a state level when Governor Edwards was back in as governor and they came out with the gambling monies. They said that money would go to education, and now Mr. Martin's up here talking about a millage for Terrebonne Parish, and you want him to convince you that what he's saying the money will go to, it will go there. Is that your question?
I'm convinced that it's going to go there, but I'm saying if you were to take the tax money from the gambling, that would help with the money, the millage y'all trying to pick up with that, there'd be more money. What happened with that? I'm trying to pick up.
No, I agree with you. I think the superintendent would agree that if all the parishes got the money that was supposed to go to education that went to gambling, he probably wouldn't be having to ask for a millage. But in an imperfect world, and I'll let him answer this right now, we didn't get that money, and you're one of them that didn't get it too.
That's correct.
All right, so there you have it. So we're not getting it, and that's certainly not Terrebonne Parish's fault. That's more of a state issue, but I understand your point.
Yeah, so that's my only hang up at all. I'm down for the millage, but that's my only hang up.
All right, well, good.
When he started the gambling, the tax they were going to give from the gamblers will go to education and home. You don't see none of these. Maybe a lot of banging up roads in Terrebonne Parish, the education system is like it's like a whole bunch of lies these people be telling us in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, and I understand that's a state issue compared to a parish issue, and once again, the parishes sort of have to do their own thing because we didn't get that money. But I understand your point, but the parishes have to be on their own on this. Okay? Thank you. Appreciate it. HTV, welcome to our program. Your question for the superintendent, please.
How are you tonight?
Good. We're doing good. Thank you.
Back in the 70s, I got to visit a considered very modern school design in Houston, Texas, I guess for the time. Could you tell me the purpose of it? You went inside the front door, you noticed something very unusual. It's one big building, there's no walls. You saw all the classrooms, but they were not divided by walls or doors.
Okay, my question would be, how can they teach if everybody's hearing everybody?
It seemed like a well-ordered, noisy beehive.
Have you heard of such a thing? She said that in Houston, they have such schools where you walk in and you can see all the classrooms, and there's no walls and all, and like it was an orderly beehive.
Yeah, there have been different fads in education. Schools without walls is a concept that has kind of been tried in different places. I'm not a fan of it, but that is a concept that some people have used.
Okay, so.
Well, thank you, and good luck on your tax.
All right, thank you for calling.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it. HTV, welcome to the program. Your question for the superintendent, please.
Yeah, I just want to ask the superintendent again. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want the superintendent to state again, I know his raise was discussed before this election deal come up. I just want him to say again so everybody can hear. I have to hear him say that he will not accept the raise if the school board votes to give him a raise.
No, I don't think.
Hear it, Mr. Martin.
Yeah, but I don't think he said that tonight. I want to just make sure the record is straight. He said that it was not time now to talk about it.
Let him answer it, Martin.
I will, but I'm just trying to set the record because you said he said it on this show tonight, and I'm here to correct you because he did not say it on this show, but I will let him answer it now. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you for asking. I would like to bring clarity to that issue. This millage is not connected to a raise for the superintendent, nor is it connected to a raise for any one of the 9 board members. The salary enhancements goes to every employee in this district except the superintendent and the board members.
So I know the school board members aren't getting a raise. I think the public's got to vote for a raise, but you say you will not accept a raise if they vote for one, right?
Well, no, let me be clear. This millage,
Sir,
This-
answer the question. You know, I'd appreciate it. I ask you a question. You will not accept a raise if the school board votes to give you one.
connected to this issue, sir, I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly.
I'm talking about the millage. If the 40 mills pass, because they discussed giving you a raise before the tax issue came up at a meeting, correct?
They did.
And then it went to, they decided to go for the tax increase instead and talk about your raise later. Well, what I want to find out is that you will not accept a raise if this tax passes and the school board votes to give you a raise.
Well, let me say this, and I'm going to answer your question directly. I will not sit here and tell you I will never take a raise as long as I'm superintendent. I will not say that. I'm not doing this anticipating a raise because there's no raise connected to this. But I wouldn't expect any employee to say, I'll never expect a raise or take a raise for the rest of your career. I plan on working for a while. But I want to reiterate, this does not result in a raise for the superintendent.
Well, I know it doesn't result in a raise, but let me tell you what the levy board did. It wasn't going to result in a raise for them too, but they all got a raise after the election. Irregardless of where the money comes from, they all got a raise.
Mr. Floyd,
you're just evading the question, Mr.
No,
Martin.
no, let me, Mr. Floyd, let me debate you on this a little bit, because I've had my rounds with the superintendent over the years, but I want to be fair with him tonight. Let me present it to you, because we discussed this earlier in the program. And I'll tell you point blank, when his raise came up a few months ago, I spoke out on this show that I didn't think it was time for the superintendent to have a raise. I was against the raise at the time. But I got to tell you this. In all of the research and all of the things that I've seen in this, if he gets a millage passed and he takes on the task of what he is about to take on, and he brings Terrebonne Parish into another level, I think he deserves a raise.
Well, let's find that. Okay, we'll let that one go. Let me ask one more question, and I'll let you go. This is a property tax raise, right?
Correct.
In other words, everybody that owns property is going to pay taxes on, because I'm living in an old house, and the assessor went up 10% on our taxes, so we paid property taxes for the first time since we've been living in this house. But what about all these people that's living in these apartment complexes, the high-rise, and Senator Circle? Are they eligible to vote? They're not property owners.
That's a good question, and we have a whole nother show on how that's going to take place.
They had a big lawsuit about 30 years ago in Orleans Parish on account of this same thing.
We have a whole panel coming. I'm not sure, Amanda, do we know the date of that? She's going to check. But so you can watch, we have a whole nother program, because we didn't want to mix up the issue of the property taxes with the school thing. So we have a whole nother panel coming on, and the assessor is going to be on and all that. So trust me, we're sort of trying to get that answered for you.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And you know, I just want to make, because I don't want to confuse your raise. We did talk about it earlier, but I will stand by what I said. If you get this through and you have to take on the task of rebuilding all this, I personally, and I'm just speaking as a taxpayer, and the audience can make up their own mind, I think you deserve a raise. So I'm just saying that for the record tonight. HTV, welcome to the program. You're on. Go ahead, please.
Martin, I was not even going to call tonight, but, you know, the school teachers angered me several years back when they went on strike right before our students, or while our students were in school. And, you know, I hear all this about, well, they're really looking out for the best interest of the students. When they struck at the point in time, they used their leverage, okay, and it really harmed our students. So that's first off.
Which strike are you talking about?
Everybody else is taking pay cuts. And, you know, for the superintendent, before he took the job, there was a tremendous pay raise given to him before he even took the job. You remember the fiasco in the school board with Mr. Petrie and stuff, Martin.
Right.
So he's already had a pay raise when he took the job.
And I'm gonna let him answer that. I'm just, what I'm trying to portray tonight is this, is that I want to look at the standards that are across the state. And I'm not just talking about Mr. Philip Martin, who's standing next to me. And I said it before, I've disagreed with him a lot over the past, but I don't disagree with him on this issue, and I'll tell you why. Because let's look past Mr. Philip Martin when we got to bring in the next superintendent. If we don't get Terrebonne Parish into a situation where we are competitive with the rest of the state, and forget about the rest of the state, we're competitive with superintendents across the nation, we are constantly going to battle an education problem in this area. Let me make an example. When they try to attract big business, when Gary Schwesson build big facilities, and BP builds big facilities in this area, they don't call up somebody to come run that facility and say, well, we're going to pay you $100,000 a year. They pay big money to get somebody in here to run it and make sure that they have the right person. I'm in agreement also to get the right person. I'm not in business not to make money, so I don't expect the superintendent of our parish to not make what is consistent with what other people in this type of population make. That's the point I'm trying to make. Now, as a public, I can't tell you how to think. I'm just thinking that on my own. You're entitled to your opinion. I'll give you the last word on that.
Well, Martin, first of all, some of our teachers, I've watched them in public speaking, and a lot of them don't even have a basic grasp of the English language, and they're teaching our children English and stuff. So I have a real problem with that. And maybe paying a little more would get better teachers. I'm not.
Well,
sure.
let me let him answer that.
How about if we speak in this term, Mr. Martin? If this tax increase goes through, will you vow that you won't take a pay increase for 3 years?
You know, I really would prefer if we could focus on 19,000 kids and what this would do for kids. This is not about Philip Martin. I'm not sure why
Okay, Mr. Martin, of course you want to focus on this increase and not on Mr. Martin because it takes the focus off of your pay. And I think you're already being adequately compensated, and if you were to vow that you wouldn't take a pay raise for 3 years, then it would validate the fact that the money would go to the education, to the building of buildings, and that you won't slide in behind this with a pay increase. And with that, I'll bid you a good night. And I would like you to answer if you will vow not to take a pay raise for 3 years.
Okay. Thank you for the call. All right. You've answered, but I'll let you answer it again.
I'll repeat that I'm not going to make a vow to never accept a pay raise or put timelines on it. I want to repeat, this millage issue is not about a pay raise for Philip Martin. This is about trying to sustain an excellent school system to provide educational opportunities for 19,000 kids for a district that's funded worse than Louisiana.
And just for the record, so the audience will know, when this millage goes forward, you won't have a school board hearing on a raise. Anything that would come up for a raise would be after all this is over with.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess to the public, I can only tell them if there would be a public hearing when it came up and they could speak
Absolutely.
at the school board meeting.
That is correct.
Consider that. And I do agree. Let's try to keep it to because we are going to take a break, try to keep it to the actual tax, because the raise would come after that, and you're more than welcome to go and appear at the school board meeting. So we'll be right back. Don't go away.